So everyone here already scanned the QR code, right? You guys are all good? Okay, so for the next one, we are going to have an icebreaker. So please get your phones out again and scan another QR code. Yes. So this one is a more fun part of the session. So you guys, since the morning session was like everyone sitting down, this one will allow you to get to know your other friends better, be it on site, online, or in the local hubs. So please do join the game.
Has everyone scanned the QR code? Okay. Can we see the Zoom screen?
Zoom
Hi,
screen.
Ankita.
Hi, hi, Priya.
Ankita,
Mm.
your microphone is not working.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. We will just share your screen now. Yes, Bea, you can begin with the icebreakers.
Great, let me share my screen on my end then. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes, we
Yes,
are.
we
We are.
can.
Amazing. So we have 70 people already. I am receiving some emojis here. Let me know when we should start.
Uh, I think we can start now. Everyone has joined the QR code, right? Yes. Let's
Okay.
begin, Bea.
Great, all right. Hopefully our online participants as well have joined. Amazing. So let us go to our first question. Which
So
country are you joining us from?
we have Singapore, Philippines. Ooh, gosh, there's
There's
so
so many.
many.
There's so many. There's so
They're
many.
popping up one
Yep.
by one.
There's so many.
Oh, Philippines is really big.
Yeah, mga kababayan namin dyan.
Yeah.
Amazing. We have people from cyberspace, Brazil, the
Cyberspace.
Netherlands,
Nigeria,
Singapore.
Cambodia.
Yes, amazing. Great to see so many people joining us today. And we have around 76 people here in our Woo Clap. All right, I guess we can move on to our
Next.
next question.
Yeah,
Yes.
Great.
let's go.
Yes. Yes.
So
So,
if you were stranded on a digital desert island with only three websites, which ones would you choose?
yeah, which ones would you choose? yIGF.Asia. Who's that? Who is that?
Whoever
Somebody
wrote
loves
that,
us.
you can come and see me later. I've got a gift for you.
Somebody wants their certificate. Wikipedia. We have open.ai, we have ChatGPT.
X.com as well.
Mhm. Netflix, Reddit.
Yeah.
I think I saw Food Panda. Someone's hungry.
On a deserted island.
Yeah, well, makes sense.
Will they be able to deliver?
Roblox.
Someone said Google
Roblox,
Maps as well.
Google Maps. That is smart though.
Yeah. Trip.com.
Cool. Yep.
Oh, I saw
Okay.
something.
Yeah.
Yep,
But
we're moving
18,
forward.
18 plus.
Yeah, we
18
should
plus
move forward after seeing what I saw too. All right. So from one as being bad to five amazing, rate the speed of internet in your area. So let's see it. So I don't
So,
know if some people are answering from, the area in Taiwan where you guys are at right now, or maybe from your countries, right?
so we
So
have
we
three
have,
and four, right,
yeah,
Bea?
yep, three and four. I see that as well. So not too bad, not too good, but that's okay. I think we all are experiencing that. So let's move on to our next question.
So, What's
So
the
what's
most embarrassing username you've ever used online?
What was yours, Natalia?
Mine?
Yep.
Yes, the most embarrassing username was Samir.
Why do we have your name, Samir?
Samir.
Samir, was that embarrassing? Are you embarrassed? We have
We have a lot of names.
we have your worst nightmare. We have
We also have
Snape.
BTS wife.
We have Snape's wifey as well. Snape is here too. Anyone name themselves too fast for you? Anyone? Or we have there's so many. Okay.
I think we are good. Good, Bea.
Good for this? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
After this, I will be searching up these usernames online.
Yes.
Great. So if you were the inventor of the internet for a day, what's the first change you would make? Answer in a word or two. So this is a pretty neat question. How about you, Ankita? What would you change?
Hmm.
It's a tough question.
Yeah, actually.
I see people
No ads.
No ads.
no ads.
Yes.
Reuse. Extracting money from people's account. What is
Mute
Who said
Ellen.
that?
We have a
More-
lot of no ads.
Yeah.
To change.
I guess
the-
we have yeah, lots of no ads. I guess yeah, people
Probably a
People
lot
just
of
don't-
people are on free YouTube or something.
probably. All right. I feel like we still have lots of people answering. No 15-second video ads. Ooh, I see. Every ad should be like 5 seconds or less. Or just no ads at all. All right, 65 people. Let's move on to our next question. Pick an emoji to describe your understanding on internet governance. So on your screen right now, you can pinpoint and then click submit to find out. Great. We have lots of people with the money. Why the money? Why the money emoji?
Exactly.
What is with money, huh? Why? Oh no, we have somebody who's angry right now with their understanding of internet governance. Okay, that's fine. Um,
We also have a lot of shocked people who are shocked by by their understanding of internet governance.
I see that. And we have people who did the smirking emoji. I don't, what is very mischievous. All right, great. All of your feelings are valid and great to know that that's how you feel about internet governance. So last but not least, we have our last question, and I will only give you guys 30 seconds to do this, okay? So no pressure. Are you ready? Find the yIGF logo now.
The bigger your cell phone screen is, the faster you'll find it.
Find the yIGF logo. Whoever finds it gets a high five from Luke. Luke, get your hand ready.
It's ready.
Luke, we have quite a few people, so you better stay outside at
I'm
the
having
door
trouble
later.
finding it myself, so I give myself a high
Bea,
five.
do we have a winner?
All right. Yeah, we do. We have quite a few people, and if you could see right over here near the cactus, it was near the cactus. If you could see on your screen, it was near the cactus, the YIGF logo.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
So
can go and
great.
you can go and high five
And
all the.
high five, everyone, Luke.
Done.
All right. that's it for our icebreaker. I hope you guys enjoyed it and learned a thing or two. And I'll pass the floor back to you guys.
Okay.
Thank you, Bea.
Thank you, Bea. Can we have the PowerPoint back? Okay. So hope you guys enjoyed the mini game. So next off, we will have Edmund Chung, CEO of Asia organization, to help us learn more about the basics of the internet. Yes, in the internet and internet governance.
Good morning, everyone. How long do I have, actually? I can go on forever. Oh, 11 minutes? Okay, all right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about internet governance in very high level and general terms. But before that, I'm going to talk a little bit about .asia. I don't know why it became like this, but instead of .com, basically what .asia does, that's my organization, is that we run part of the internet, which is the domain name, and that's also our income source. So next time you think about something to do, you put it on a .asia domain. All that money actually goes back to supporting internet development and adoption around Asia Pacific. So we operate as a not-for-profit organization. One of the things that we do, of course, is something like today. NetMission, actually, if you haven't looked at, I think some of you have know about NetMission, but NetMission is a longest-standing youth internet governance engagement project and started in 2009, and we're quite excited about it. If you haven't heard about it, please go and check it out. But back to the topic, right? Really, you can search and look, and you can see lots of stuff on internet governance online, of course. But I wanted to relate it to people. I think a lot of times when we think about internet governance, we should also think about the people that brought things to bear. Fake news is obviously one of the things that we often talk about. And I think many people probably in the Asia Pacific region would have seen these types of fake news about Fukushima. And interesting development on this is, of course, there are also a lot of activities and initiatives that look at how these disinformation gets spread. This is actually a pretty cool a diagram. I won't go into detail, but you can check it out in iorg.tw, I believe. And they're a fact-checking website, and this looks at how the fake news spread over time. But I wanted to also talk about, of course, these are the topics that you would come across and you think about when you think about internet governance. AI is obviously for the last year or so has been a big topic. But interestingly, not only this being interesting, what I did want to highlight is that just a few years ago, when you talk about artificial intelligence, when you talk about AI, it's not considered part of internet governance. Why is that? Well, because AI is done outside of the internet. It's not how the internet connects. However, when you really think about it, so the last few years have made a huge change, not only because of ChatGPT, but also because people realize that most of the AI is actually learning from the internet. So that relates some of the technologies. And in fact, today, any kind of technology, I'll probably challenge you to any piece of technology is probably somehow connected to the internet. So when we talk about internet governance, it used to be a much smaller subset of discussion, but nowadays, really it's much broader. But when you look at some of the issues, when you look at machine learning, you also look at some of the immediate interesting things, because when we talk about AI, we often talk about why is the clock adding? I thought I had 11 minutes and subtracting. So when should I go? It's 50. Oh, you added minutes for me. Okay. All right. So one of the things I want to highlight is that when machines learn on the internet, they create kind of bias. And this is a very apparent bias. The world is not just about English, right? I mean, here in Asia Pacific, although I'm speaking English, you're listening to English, but most of our mother tongue is not English. However, the internet itself is still almost 60% in the English language. What does that mean? That means that the machines that learn stuff on the internet, they have, by definition, would be biased, right? So this is some of the interesting thing I think, want to highlight. And of course, the other thing about the machine learning part is that, well, they're learning from your information, right? So even the biggest companies are telling their staff to be warned about privacy, right? Privacy is one of the things that this guy really brought to bear, right? I mean, Facebook and some of the main platforms. But why is that an issue? When you think about the policies, of course, when Facebook or Google was created, the concept of the internet is that you can have permissionless innovation. But what they created, however, doesn't necessarily mean that what they've after the permissionless innovation, we cannot create policies and legislations that actually deal with some of the issues that we look at. One of the things about Facebook or many of these platforms is that they look like public spaces, right? And in actual laws and so on, in a public space, you have certain rights, and you can assert those rights. However, Facebook actually, or Twitter or now X, or these platforms are actually privately owned. So this creates another layer of challenge, which means this is your private place. This is someone's company. You're actually doing stuff on the in someone's quote unquote private property, but it does feel so much like public space, right? So that's why we need to think through. These are some of the things that we need to think through when we think about internet governance. And of course, we talk about privacy and we talk about your personal data. It's much about informed consent, and I think you probably know this by now. But this is the guy that I want to highlight. Another guy, and do people still know who this guy is? Most people know. Anyone who doesn't know? But anyway, so Edward Snowden, of course, brought us to the attention of national security, and these issues of brought it to the headline news in terms of what we think of as national security and versus privacy, and how your privacy is being really invaded in terms of what is called dragnet surveillance is probably the best way to describe it. And one of the things, of course, we need to think about as we think about these issues is the balance. We're always talking about the balance. And and nowadays, a lot of the discussion, I'm sure you've heard of digital sovereignty. And when we think about digital sovereignty, these are national countries that are trying to tell us that we are helping you to protect. We are trying to protect our citizens. But in reality, I think what we really it's supposed to be personal. It's supposed to be one line, but. When we think about digital sovereignty, when we think about national security, a lot of times it's important also to think about personal digital sovereignty. And even if you wound back to a few hundred years ago when the world actually debated about the concept of sovereignty, personal sovereignty and personal freedom has been the basis of a lot of the concepts of sovereignty itself. So all of this brings me to these two guys you finally don't know, I guess. Right. But this is, these two guys actually are founders of a website called the Pirate Bay. You might have heard about it, But this was, I think, the first headline news that internet governance brought us, which is all about copyright. And I guess what I did, only part that I wanted to highlight is that why is copyright an interesting issue for internet governance? Because it actually highlights a number of things. When we think about internet and policies around it, what is the difference between the internet and the physical space? Well, copyright tells you a little bit of things. So in the past, I don't know if anyone in this room have ever used CDs. Hopefully you have. In the past, the unregulated part is actually pretty big, and the regulated copyright part is actually relatively small, and there's a little bit of gray area of fair use. Why do I say that? The reason is, well, if you get a CD or if you actually have a book, you can read it, obviously, you can sleep on it, you can do anything with it, and what is most interesting is that you can give it to someone, you can borrow it to someone, lend it to someone, you can even sell it. But I don't think if you buy a Kindle book, you can sell it. But so what does that mean? So on the internet, what happened to copyright was that it used to be a very small part that is copyright protected, but on the internet, because it's possible, right? Because it's possible, you can't sell a Kindle book. Well, that also means the regulated part of the copyright concept became much bigger. So these are the guys, as I mentioned. Oh, the other thing, of course, is that the internet becomes it's anywhere, anytime. And one of the things that is interesting to note, and it's related to copyright. So there was one aspect is that the copyright regime itself enlarged. The other aspect is the time. Is a time vector, and you can see that telephone took about 75 years to reach 50 million users, and the Angry Bird back in the days used only 35 days. And this this presentation was done a few years ago, and Pokemon broke that record back then in 19 days. But I did update this slide, but on a different aspect. I updated the slide by saying, by looking at the services that actually reach 100 million users. Netflix, it actually took Netflix about 18 years to reach 100 million users, but ChatGPT last year took only 2 months. And why is this important to copyright? Right? The reason why it's important is that copyright actually it has a time limit. The concept of copyright, obviously, is to protect some of the authors and protect people, intellectual property, in a sense that they can monetize and they can use. You'll be encouraged to write books and then you can sell them and so on. But but with the internet, that changes hugely. In the past, when you have to ship books to around the world, it takes a lot of time. So on the internet, the time and space itself is changed. And the two guys that I mentioned who started Pirate Bay also started what is called a Pirate Party. And their concept of copyright is that in the real world today, copyright lasts for 60 years beyond the author's death. Well, they say they're pushing for legislation, for example, to say that copyright should be just 5 years, let's say, right? And because on the internet it's hugely faster, right? I just showed you how the time aspect is different. The other thing that's important is that when copyright owners keep pushing for ISPs, for example, to monitor to look at whether people are downloading illegal copies, one of the interesting things is that whenever you do something like that on the internet, it also means that whoever you ask to monitor has to monitor every piece of download, right? It's not just the illegal download. Because if you want to identify someone downloading illegal content, well, then that means essentially you have to monitor everything, because or else how would you distinguish between the two? So, however, there are certain challenges ahead, but I wanted to note, I think I have 1 minute left, so I want to note one of the concepts that this guy brought, which is, I think, very important when we think about internet governance. Vint Cerf is one of the fathers of the internet, and one of the things that he mentioned is that when we think about it, internet, it's kind of like a mirror of society. And when you look at the governance of the internet, you really want to think about whether it's the mirror that is causing the problem, which is the internet itself, or whether it's the society that has changed and the society part that needs to be governed. So the concept I want to bring out really is the concept of governance of the internet, which is the mirror itself, or the technology that runs the internet itself, which is very different from the governance on the internet, which is the applications and all those kind of things. And we talk about the different layers of things, but I wanted to just jump very quickly to the end, because I'm only 25 seconds left. For most of the history of internet governance, actually, before the 2000, well, before you were born, maybe, it's only about the governance of the internet, because it was all about the technology. But right around 2000, that was when all the governance on the internet started happening. And of course, nowadays, it's all about that. But I will skip through this because you probably think about multi-stakeholder model. And I wanted to go to the last part. But the internet governance itself is not, it is not done yet. And a lot of, I will skip through this and just talk. Sorry. So I think one of the things I want to leave with you guys with is that all those issues that I mentioned about is a little bit of the quick history of the high hot topics of the internet governance, and that changes all the time. And the one thing that we from .Asia and about the yIGF and the Youth Internet Governance Forum is really to get you guys participating in part of the discussion, because the participation from younger people is important as we set policies for the future. And a very important thing to think about is whether you are looking at the governance of the internet, which is the technical layer, or which is the applications and the user layers. However, to complicate things, those layers are not really that rigid anymore. A lot of the things that are done on applications and a lot of things that are done by people and laws that are looking at applications have implications into the technical layer, and that's what we call internet fragmentation. And I'll stop here, but just to leave you with the concept that as you think about the different policies, do think about the different, whether you're looking at governance on the internet or governance of the internet, knowing that when you create laws for things that are happening on the internet, they could have implications on what we like as an open and universal internet itself. Thank you.
So do we have any questions from either online, remote, on-site participants? Bea, can you hear me?
Yes, Luke,
Okay.
I can hear you. We're just waiting for if they have any questions.
Or local hubs? If not, then you can take over.
No questions? I can
we
keep talking.
Anyone from Islamabad local hub or any from our Philippine local hub?
Okay, if there's none, or if you will have any questions later, feel free to type or approach Edmund for the on-site. And thank you, Edmund, for the concise discussion on the basics of internet and internet governance. Yeah, it was great to learn more about our multilingual world, our digital sovereignty, and other relevant issues surrounding the internet and internet governance, as well as the concept of internet on and off. Okay, so now for the panel discussion, I'm going to hand it over to Samir.
Thank you, Nataya. So now proceeding with the next engagement, now we have a panel discussion on one of the focus area, which is empowering access, democratizing the internet for all. Can we have the PPT, please? For that, I would like to call on the stage Mr. Pablo. He is Senior Director of Engagement with the APNIC. Maybe we can have a round of applause. Yeah. Yeah. Now I would like to call on the stage Edmund. He's CEO Asia. Now I would like to call on the stage Elia. She is ISOC Youth Ambassador for 2024. And last but not the least, very important part, Veronica from the Australian government. Now, in this panel discussion, we have divided these five segments. First of all, we would start with the introduction part, and after that, we will proceed with the panel discussion. And the Q&A, we will open the floor for the people who are here participating on site as well as offline and the local hub. Then we can have the closing remarks, sharing the summarized summary of the session and the takeaways which each one of us would be having after a quite intensive discussion. Now, this is before deep diving in the panel, I would like to share what this panel is all about. Since internet is something which has become a very essential activity or essential everyday essential element for exercising right in our democratic society, which was not earlier, because earlier we treated internet as a leisure, or we treat internet for specific activities. But these days, since internet is being used for each and everything, so it's important to deep dive into its essential element and how we see the internet, its element, and how one element can impact the other things. So this would be the overall session description. And now we will be deep diving, since the decentralization of the internet is very important. So it's important to focus on the elements which makes the internet open, secure, stable, trusted, and sustainable. Because having the internet centralized under one authority may have its negative impact or negative consequences on the end users. So it's important to deep dive into the essential and the core elements to see what is important for each one of us. And since internet is something which currently it's one of the engines of the growth which is helping the economies to leap forward, and each one of us have seen during the pandemic that the internet was one of the essential and the core element which helped the economies to move forward, which could, like, if internet was not there, we could have a standstill position and no one would be able to work anything, or we can't have access to anything, especially the information which was accessible during the pandemic. And last but not the least, this panel discussions aim to explore the different ideas, including DAO. DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organizations. The main core element of the DAO we will be discussing during the panel discussion. And without further delay, I would I've already introduced the speakers here, and I will quickly jump on the.
Just before we begin, just to the yIGF participants, we highly encourage you to take notes. So that will be useful for your idea wall and the youth policy statement. And then you can bring those conversations to the synthesis document at the APIGF and also the town hall sessions.
Thank you, Luke. Now I would like Pablo, maybe you can share some introductory remarks on the panel description or.
That was something that I didn't want to be the one to start the discussion. I was just hoping, choose another one. It's so good to be here with all of you, and it's an honor. And we are going to talk about democratizing the internet for all. And I read these questions, and it was a lot of fun because Veronica and I had a conversation to try to decrypt what these questions were about. Especially the one about DAOs, the decentralized autonomous organizations, which are these things in crypto that they use to take some decisions and put some voting, etc. And we thought long and hard about this one because it seems that it is very easy to fall into the trap of democratizing equals sort of grand technology equals we just need to implement DAO. Therefore, we will have democracy on the internet. And I think that's the logic that I think we want to break or put forward as a debate here. So the thing is that I don't want to be perceived as very old-fashioned and sort of bringing all technology here. I want to try to sort of stand up for the times and modernity, but democracy is all about participation. Democracy is this, you know. Democracy is when citizens are interested in the evolution of society and participate one way or another. The traditional way of participating is through vote, but something that the internet demonstrated is that we are able to demonstrate more directly, and not only via vote, but also via opinions, and our opinions can be aggregated and can be multiplied without the need of like a TV station. We are able to sort of put forward not only like a like or a follow, we're able to put forward our views and influence sort of the decision-making process through that. And the more informed we are, the more civic we are, the best the decisions will be. So that's the approach that I take in terms of what democracy should be. And democracy is also about trust. You know, what happened with the crypto things, they are based in this concept called zero trust. And that's something that it doesn't make much sense to me in the democracy kind of side, because in democracy there's always this trade-off between interests, trade-off between views, trade-off between stakeholders. That's a multi-stakeholder model. So there are always like these trade-offs of saying, well, this decision needs to balance this group or that group, this view and that group, this interest or that interest. And it cannot be done anonymously. It cannot be done in a decentralized way. It has to aggregate. It has to come through participation, through deliberation, through discussion, through certain civil fights for an outcome. And that is not what these crypto technologies bring to the table because we're not able to actually meaningfully participate. We're just able to put a vote in one way, but on the basis of zero trust. Is that okay as a start?
Yeah. Thank you, Pablo, for the introductory remark. That was quite insightful. And the trust factor is something which we require in democracy. And democracy is something which could help us in developing a good multi-stakeholder model. That is the fundamental principle through which we can work on other imperfections which are there in the model. Now, building on that, since democracy is required and for the internet, multi-stakeholder model is something which is its one of the core elements. Elia, would you like to share something on that?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. So nice to be here. So nice to see all these faces around us, and thank you for giving me the floor. So this part of internet governance, the multi-stakeholderism, is something that has a special place in my heart. As one of the founders of IGF in Greece, I totally see the meaning and the price, if you want, of this big element to our lives. Democracy is us, is giving the floor to many different people from many different backgrounds, from government, from civil society, to speak up, to share the word to the world. And in general, is the key element that will democratize the internet, is the key element that will prioritize ethical, inclusive, and transparent governance. So I think it should be the main element for us to continue the governance, and it's the main element for us to continue doing what we're doing right here.
Yeah, thank you, Alia. Since we all were participating quite interactively in the last session, which was delivered by Edmund. Edmund, would you like to highlight other core elements? Like, would you like to deep dive on the issues which you were discussing, governance of the internet and on the internet, which are critical for this multi-stakeholder model?
Sure. And I guess building on what Pablo mentioned and what you mentioned in terms of what I talked about the internet governance in the old days was a lot about the internet technology itself, the technical layer. And at the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, there's a saying that they don't believe in voting. This is a fundamental thing about internet governance. When we talk about a multi-stakeholder, bottom-up, global internet governance model, consensus-based is actually a most important aspect. Voting is relegated to a very low. It's essentially to me, I think voting is a last resort because in order to come up with policies and in order to come up with good policies that take the nuances of different stakeholders' interests and also harms and other things in place, it is really important to actually discuss. So I think, to me, I think decentralized autonomous organizations or DAOs, of course, they have a place. It's actually quite useful for collective action, simple collective actions and certain projects. I think it's a great model for collaboration to do particular projects. However, if you want to talk about actual policies that affect people's lives, I think we need a more sophisticated approach. And the one thing that I do want to also highlight is that if you ask me today, and I think if we get to reform the United Nations, I think the United Nations should be a bottom-up multi-stakeholder model. Why was it, in my view, why was the UN created the way it was many years ago after the Second World War? Well, they didn't have the internet back then. It was not possible for the global people to actually speak about policies at a global level. It was not possible. But with the internet, that changes everything. It is possible for people around the world to discuss and actually come to decisions on a consensus-based approach. So, if you ask me, and actually I actually did do a series of workshops at the IGF a good few years ago on what I call Democracy 3.0. Democracy today, we think about a lot about voting, right? But that is so Democracy 2.0, which was designed hundreds of years ago before the internet. It's what is called a representational democracy, right? You select, by voting, you select representatives to represent you to discuss about issues. But today on the internet, with the internet, we can actually participate directly. And that's the difference, I think, about the global multi-stakeholder internet governance model.
Yeah, thank you, Edmund, and thank you for highlighting the fact that how would multilateral institutions like UN would look like had internet being there in the previously when these bodies were formed or incorporated. And like before deep diving into any other question, I would like to share that we have the Slidos. So if any one of you have any questions or any comment, you can share on that, and so that we can have all the questions at one place. And I would like to give the floor to Veronica for introductory remark now.
Thank you. So, yep, just as an opening statement, while I do work for the Australian government, I am here in a personal capacity, so these comments are my own, not official government policy. I think it's quite important, just to add to what the other panellists have said, that a lot of the current internet governance processes are already bottom-up, consensus-driven, particularly in the multi-stakeholder fora. But they can only work so far unless people are actually getting involved. So to add to what the other panellists have said, they're only as representative as the people who turn up, speak up, reach out, who actually do make a difference and contribute to these processes. So it's quite important that other all stakeholder groups do feel empowered and able to access these processes. So one of the things that I think technologies like DAOs or other new processes that can work within the existing structures and potentially help develop these consensus on positions on various issues, bring those to the policy-making processes, contribute to those processes and to the decision-making processes. A lot of them are open to everybody to engage in, but you need to turn up and speak up. And certainly a lot of governments are very open to hearing non-government stakeholder viewpoints. So I think there's sometimes a bit of a perception that it's governments and multi-stakeholder, and governments are part of the multi-stakeholder community. We're one of the stakeholders. So I think certainly with the multilateral processes, where you can work with governments, make your connections with your government reps, where possible, I guess allow them to be your voice in those processes, but certainly work with them. Governments have a part to play, but also everybody else does too. So I think it's developing those relationships, as Pablo was saying. The trust is important. A lot of these decisions and processes are developed through relationships, through conversations, through understanding each other's perspectives, through knowing where everyone's coming from and what they're bringing to the table, and then arriving at a consensus view. It's not done through voting generally. And usually people sort of know whose interests everyone's representing. So are you talking to somebody who's speaking on behalf of the end user versus somebody who's speaking on behalf of a big technology company or on behalf of government? So it helps to keep those conversations transparent. It helps to keep the decisions and any voting accountable, because you know where people are coming from when they're saying what they're saying, when they're fighting for what they're fighting or arguing for what they're arguing for. It's important that everybody's part of this. So that's probably my opener on that one.
Yeah. Thank you, Veronica. Yeah, you rightly stated that the government should act as an enabler and as a catalyst in order to bringing all the stakeholders together on a same table in order to discuss the challenges which they are actually facing. So this panel discussion is based on certain policy questions. Can you present the policy questions? So the first question is, what are the benefits and the challenges of implementing DAOs, decentralized technologies like DAO, in internet governance and its decision-making processes? The second one is, how can internet democratizing help in creating a responsible digital future? And the third one is how to ensure that the current practices should be sustainable. Now we would be like looking how the speakers look into all these dimensions and what are their thoughts on that. Now, anyone would like to start? Yeah, thanks, Elia.
Hello again. So when I first joined Internet Society, I've heard this really difficult and complicated word, DAOs. What is DAOs? It's not something really common to see. So I would love to break down a little bit this phrase, to see together what it's all about, and also see some of the challenges and some of the benefits. So Imagine really simply that a decentralized autonomous organization is like an online club or company that doesn't have a boss. All the members have a saying, all the members can have an input, and everyone can vote on decisions. So it's really unlike all the traditional organizations where decisions are made by a central group, for example, board of directors. Here, everybody has a saying. So that's why we said that DAOs operate on a decentralized model. So we see that here we have inclusivity. All the members have a saying and everyone can put their opinion on it. But how another really important characteristic is that DAOs function automatically based on pre-programmed rules. How? These rules are coded into smart contracts. What are smart contracts? Smart contracts are some contracts which execute transactions, for example, or enforce agreements without human intervention. So what you're doing, you're putting the rule into a code, and this code is being implemented without you doing anything else. But how we represent power in DAOs? Everyone has the same power, as we said before. Is the inclusivity the only thing? So most DAOs use tokens to represent voting power. Everybody has a right to vote, but there are some different powers inside the organizations. So participants hold tokens, which are used to vote and have a very specific input, a bigger input rather than the other participants. We can talk about that later on. So for me, the two main benefits of DAOs is transparency, because everybody has a saying. It's inclusivity, because there's no boss, let's say it in a more simple way. And the last thing that I find it really important is that DAOs are secure. Why DAOs are secure? Because they operate on a blockchain. What is a blockchain? Blockchain is a type of digital database, let's say, or a public ledger that is used to record information in a way that is secure. So imagine you're part of a DAO that manages a community fund, let's say. When someone proposes to donate money to a charity, that proposal is recorded to a blockchain. Everyone in DAO can see the proposal, and when members vote on it, their votes are also recorded. So we ensure transparency through this way. Of course, all these matters are more complicated than I'm saying right now, but I wanted to provide you a really simple image of this kind of organizations. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Valia, for highlighting the elements which creates a DAO, like blockchain, smart contracts. Now, I would like to move to Pablo, maybe.
Thank you, and thank you for all of this, Elliot. This was great. I think you set up a good case in terms of sort of what are DAOs and whether that is something that we should look forward towards democratizing the internet. I hear somehow that you are saying, like, let's give them a chance, and I'm going to spice it up, and I will say, no way. But let's try. Let's try. So Edmond basically suggested a more sophisticated approach to this, and it cannot get more sophisticated than what Elia said. And I'm saying, let's not, probably what we need is not more sophistication, but just less sophistication and more democracy. I would call it like that. So in the shortest way I can do this, because Edmond mentioned, how about the UN? Is that an effective mechanism of decision making? And Veronica was very careful, because she said, I'm not speaking on behalf of the government. I'm just saying that sort of it is as effective as the people that participate on it and the views that are represented. So if you take UN and the government, or the governmental approach, or the multilateral approach, how does it work? It is very simple. It is citizens in a democracy vote for representatives. So their representatives go into a chamber, they debate and say, like, fight and deliberate, and then they issue policies, and then they update policies, and then the government tries to implement them or monitor them or enforce them, whatever it is. So that's more or less how it works. And then internationally, we were having these conversations exactly 20 years ago. And at the UN, it was like democratic internet governance means one member, one vote. And one member meant government. So the government is represented not even by the Congress people, but by one diplomat that is at that table that aggregated all the views or positions from that government at that particular point, issue a vote in the UN, and then aggregated those votes, and then you will take a decision. Is that democratic or not? Is the DAO democratic or not? I mean, what's a smart contract, right? It's a simple question. It is exactly the same as a UN vote. It's like one member, one vote. Did you aggregate all the views from the digital citizens and those that also you lowered the barriers of participation for those that wanted to participate but couldn't participate because of cost, language, whatever it is. And then you did that, and then you voted on it, and then you voted on the UN on it, and then all of that. That usually didn't happen. And it is more the burden of the digital citizens to be able to be here in this room, debating these things, and influencing sort of the whole ecosystem in a more active way, but probably in a less sophisticated way. I'll leave it like that in terms of how to discuss this.
Yeah. Thanks, Pablo, for mentioning whether the DAO are actually are they following the democratic principles or not, and we would be like further deep diving on that. Before that, I would like to call Edmund to share his views here.
Just want to respond quickly to Elia and Pablo. You know, I mentioned the concept that I used to talk about in terms of democracy 3.0. I think with the internet, we can really rethink what we mean by democracy. I think DAOs are useful, and in fact, in what I wrote as Democracy 3.0, there are two aspects. There's one which is called deliberative democracy. In fact, there is a session this afternoon. I know you guys should stay here, but some of you might be going to the deliberative democracy. And it emphasizes the discussion, right? I mean, with discussion, your position could change. The whole point about discussing is that you might go into something thinking, I'm going to vote this way, but after discussing, after understanding other people, you would change your vote. The other part of it is usually called liquid democracy, and I think that's when DAOs are very useful. That's the voting part. Again, I see it as voting is a last resort approach because you're supposed to develop consensus. But when you have to vote, DAOs actually allow the implementation what is called liquid democracy. If you take a look at liquid democracy, it means that in the past we vote for representatives who then discuss, as Pablo says. Liquid democracy is a concept where you can take back that vote. So at any particular, for example, legislation discussion, you can take back your vote from your representative. And if lots of people take back their vote, then the result could change from a representational democracy, and that's when I think DAOs could be useful. It's a mechanism only. It's a voting mechanism, to me at least. DAOs are a mechanism for voting, and it's quote unquote top down because someone has to design the system in that way. But it is actually quite useful for collective action in that sense, which is the implementation of the concept of liquid democracy. So that's, I guess, what I wanted to add.
Yeah. Thank you for highlighting this crucial part, like whether the democracy whether we should follow the fundamental principles of the democracy in the internet or whether it's vice versa. And I think we have one question. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Donna, and it might be a question, but also be a comment. So thinking about what Pablo said earlier, especially when thinking about zero trust, cryptocurrencies, blockchain, and DAOs, I feel like one thing though, when thinking about democracy and the idea of having democracy 3.0, is I feel like there's something within DAOs that could really improve democracy. So democracy is about having everyone, giving everyone the liberty to kind of express themselves, or maybe having a representative express whatever it is that they want seen change in society. But the problem that we're having right now in many democracies is that we're voting these leaders out, but at the end of the day, how much surveillance do we have over these policies they're executing? And I feel like DAOs, because it's based on zero trust, the idea that you cannot just trust their word, you have this kind of transparency here where you can verify things on your own. I feel like that's really, really important in democracy. So I would have to disagree a bit with Pablo on him not really wanting to incorporate, modern technologies. But I feel like because it's emerging, because it's a new technology, there's gonna be a lot of marginalized voices, or a lot of people might not know how these work. But I feel like in the future, it's going to be a big part of how we make decisions as society as a whole. So I feel like that's also something that we could think about. Thank you.
Pablo, would you like to add something?
I would love to. I hope that's okay. I loved what you say. And I want to put emphasis on one thing that you mentioned, which is the surveillance aspect of things. In a way, what I understood you're saying is that it is a safer option to do it anonymously, because when you do it overtly or openly, you face sort of different consequences. Is that part of what you were trying to say?
I think what I'm trying to say is that when we trust people, maybe leaders, to do their jobs, we don't really know what exactly it is that they're doing. There's some undisclosed information that's happening behind the scenes that we have no idea about.
I love that, because if you play the UN and the traditional game, it's like a poker game. Because indeed, sort of you have a series of interests that are playing out, but those interests are not necessarily in the forum or openly explained. They are in lobby groups or in closed chambers or influencing through many different ways. And somehow they, and we know all of that, affect the decision-making process. Something that I love about the multi-stakeholder process is that poker doesn't work. It's like chess, because a clear condition for multi-stakeholderism is that you need to reveal your interest. In fact, the ultimate hack of multi-stakeholder process is people that don't have anything to lose. So if you participate, you don't have anything to lose on that game. In the multi-stakeholder model, that's what will make it die. But in multi-stakeholderism, you have to come with your card wide open and say, this is my interest, because for me, this is what it is at stake. And everybody needs to do that effectively, and then you aggregate your interests through friction and deliberation, maybe with some help, with questions that you can put in smart contracts. As Edmond said, probably with the help of, at the last resort, okay, we couldn't agree, let's just vote it. How do you vote it? By majority, by 2/3, whatever it is, but you vote it and then you decide it. But in multi-stakeholderism, you have to rebuild your cards. In the current implementation of many of the crypto discussions, there are so many cards that are not open. In particularly, the first card. The first card is just the policy that creates this thing. And you have no control. After it is created, it is one time. After that, citizens don't have the opportunity to change those like fundamental policies until you create another thing. Yes or no, Delia?
I agree, and that's. I mean, at first, of course, I agree that there are pros and cons in DAOs, and it's something really new, and there are many legal loopholes inside, and of course, in all the matters, there are pros and cons. here I agree with the disadvantages. I think also that there are advantages, as she said. I love this transparency that exists and everyone can see what's happening. But at the other hand, I agree with your perspective, and that's the meaning of the panel, after all, to see diverse opinions. And please, everyone, speak up and share your insights, because it helps us broaden our horizons and change our perspective many times.
Yeah, thank you. Now I will give the floor to Veronica for sharing her comments on that.
Thank you. And I agree with what Elia said. It's a good opportunity to share our horizons and to talk about what these issues are. And as Pablo's also said, that it's getting through these conversations that you see what people's interests are, you see where they're coming from, you see that why they're arguing a particular case for why a policy should go a different direction, or why this is a good idea versus that. So that's, I think, a great asset of the multi-stakeholder process as well. I think where it can be improved as well, and I think this is bringing it back to the democratisation question, is we need to broaden that base of participation. I think for me that's critical. There are so many internet governance stakeholders that are not actively involved, and they're from underserved regions, or they're from places with limited connectivity, or who have 55 other things that they're doing as part of their job, and they don't have time to get involved in every single thing. So how do we bring these people into the conversation? Technologies like DAOs are good in getting people involved, or do they unwillingly or unintentionally exclude people because of things like connectivity or access to technologies, or do they need to be educated in how to use these processes? So how then can we use DAOs as potentially part of the existing structure, rather than necessarily a replacement of any of the particular functions? So I think there's a role for it. I think, Edmund, you were saying before, is potentially one outcome of a consensus building process could be a DAO process. They could be part of the solution. I think they do need to work with the existing structure. But I think ultimately we need to get more people at the table, and do we need to think about how the processes are run, how decisions are made? Are we unintentionally excluding people? Are we making it as easy for people to access as possible? Are we having meetings at at the same time that it's always at 3 o'clock in the morning for some people? So how do we open up the process that already exists, which is already in multi-stakeholder segments anyway, it's already fairly bottom-up and consensus building, but how can we improve it? Because I think there can be improvements, because there's a lot of people out there that are not actively participating, and why is that? Why are they excluded from the process, and what can we do about it?
Yeah. Thanks, Veronica, for sharing your comments and sharing the perspective which you are which you have felt in the last years while interacting with these emerging technologies. Now, I would like to invite maybe Elia to share the summarized comments of the discussion, and maybe you can be quick so that we can answer the questions also, maybe in like 30 to 45 seconds.
Should I answer the questions?
Maybe you can share your some closing remarks on that.
On this part. Of course, yeah. As we said, DAOs, this type of organization is something new that doesn't exist in many places. We always have to think that each and every type of organization has some advantages and disadvantages, as I said. And it depends to the one who starts it, if or she wants to continue with this type of organization. Of course, here, you can someone else do the closing remarks?
Yeah, yes. I mean, you just, not the closing remark, maybe you can share your experience, how you have felt while interacting with this technology.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the best part. I really love the part where I could change my perspective in terms of what are the disadvantages. I had some disadvantages in mind, but now I must broaden them. For example, one of the challenges, I thought that they were the technical barriers, or like the complexity, or like the legal loopholes, or the scalability issues. But here, I've heard many new aspects for me, and now I'm more skeptical towards DAOs, let's say.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, there are certain privileged DAOs which defeat the fundamental principles of the democratic society. So we need to look into that element also in order to make them true democratic, following the principles and in its true letter and spirits. Now, Edmund, can you share your closing remarks on this?
Sure. I've spoken quite a bit, but I'll add one thing. DAOs is these are technologies, right? They're supposed to help us. They're not supposed to dictate how we make decisions. So when we think about it, utilizing a technology, it's always good, right? I mean, it's easier and quicker. Yes, there's the literacy issue, and but we can fix those. But I want to end with one note: is that having studied these things for a little while, I really believe that any system creates vested interests. Whatever system it is, however perfect you want to create it. So all systems need to evolve over time and keep changing. That's the only way to make sure that the vested interests don't become too vested. And people do need to come with interests, as and state what their interests are for systems to work. So one of the things about the internet governance ecosystem, I believe, is our ability to continue to evolve our own systems. That's going to be the test at ICANN, at IETF, at APNIC, at other places, to be able to evolve the system. So I think that's the part where certainly a DAO wouldn't be able to do, because you need people to actually talk and change the actual system. So that's where I want to close.
Yeah, thank you. Now I think we can take some questions on the floor, and if we have any question in the local hub or for the participants who are there online. Bia, do we have any question online?
Yeah, we have one from the local hub in the Philippines. JC, would you like to unmute your mic on your end?
All right. So good morning, everyone, or rather, good afternoon, everyone from the Philippines. So can you hear us properly?
Yeah, you are audible, JC.
All right. So we're going to inquire how can a decentralized autonomous organization, or DAO, effectively balance the principles of decentralization and transparency with the need for robust security measures, particularly that has been specified, such as surveillance and the zero trust architecture, and particularly in order for us to protect against internal and external threats. So we've been reading as well some common questions on the Slido, and we believe that, or particularly I personally believe that using the AO is in adding more decentralized nature to the internet. So it's can you give more insights about how we can particularly balance out those principles on the internet? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, JC. Anyone would like to take that question?
I guess I'm happy to add a little bit. Again, I think DAOs are useful, and it's a technology. If you define the decision you want to make collectively very well, then it's a good process. If you aren't able to define it into a very narrow scope, then it's very difficult to actually use it as a decision-making process. I think that's, to me, that's really. I don't think there needs to be a debate on whether DAOs are useful for democracy or not. It's really just a technology and a mechanism to make collective decisions. Of course, it can help, but who defines the actual narrow decision scope is the question.
Yeah, I mean, in every playground we have certain rules. So in the DAO also, it's better if we have certain guidelines, certain terms and conditions, so that people are aware about the rights which they have and the responsibilities which they have to follow. I think we have one more question. Perhaps we don't really need fancy tech like DAOs to democratize the internet. What are some viable ways to reclaim the decentralized nature of the internet? Elia? Oh, Pablo, yeah.
I think that we answered that, and Veronica said it like super well. The only way to reclaim the decentralized nature of the internet is participation. And it's an uphill battle because indeed decision making is not necessarily democratic in this age and time. So we seem to be based on this panel that we really want to democratize sort of the internet. And this is not a political statement or a political thing. It's more about how can we make more opinions from more stakeholders be counted in the ultimate decision making. And the fact is that right now, these days, if you see the internet as a whole, as complex as it is, there are very few actors and players and stakeholders that are taking the decisions. And the only thing that we can do about it is to talk about it and participate wherever possible.
Yeah, please.
Thank you for your input, Pablo. I totally agree that the most viable way is participation. You are participating now through yIGF. You can participate through an NGO, through a research group, through a council that you will be doing, for example, policy making or policy proposals to the government. There are many viable and doable ways if you want to participate.
And like we have more time for the questions, we can take one more question. So this question is, does multi-stakeholder really promote equity? Not many can spend time to have fully informed opinions on issues, especially when bread making is more urgent. Maybe you represent the government, so if...
Absolutely, I mean, and time can be an issue. I mean, from someone who works in internet governance, sometimes internet governance is 5% of somebody's job. So, and a lot of the conversations are happening outside of standard business hours for those people. So trying to find a way for people to get involved in policy processes, sometimes some of the supporting documentation and the information behind processes can be quite dense to read through. It can be a challenge to get through it all. And I think this is where having your networks of other stakeholders can help share the burden, share the load. Governments do it. We coordinate with other governments to find areas where we've got shared interests. A lot of the non-government stakeholders do the same thing. They're working together. They're finding that their colleagues either from the same country or other countries working in the same industries and other industries to try and share knowledge, share information, build those networks. Everybody doesn't have to cover everything. So having those connections, having those networks, getting in touch with your government reps where you can to sort of see how they can support things. You know, they can focus on the regulation side of it while you're informing them and helping them out with the technical side, because often policymakers don't always have the expertise themselves. So I think, again, people don't have to do everything. It's if you work with colleagues, with other stakeholders, with other communities, and share knowledge, share information, and sometimes that means sharing the burden. And so, you know, one person covers one issue, one person covers another, share knowledge. That's one way it can be done. And certainly having access to appropriate technical expertise for people who in this space that aren't necessarily having that background can definitely be a shortcut. Certainly having somebody in your corner who can explain to you those concepts and why this is important and what are the implications of heading down a particular path that way. We may not necessarily foresee the implications of a decision we're about to make, and having somebody in our networks who knows that better and can explain that to us can be really helpful and can be a shortcut. So by participating and developing those networks, and it doesn't have to be in person, you don't have to travel, all over the world to attend these events. Most of these are also happening online. and you can develop those networks that way as well, and share the load. I think you don't try and necessarily get across everything, because I think looking at the volume of information that's out there and policy questions, and it's a bit of a losing battle trying to do everything. So I'd say get out there and participate and make your connections and make use of each other's knowledge.
Yeah, and building on that, I think just like in a democracy, people go and do their exercise their rights. They exercise their rights in order to share their views, share their perspective when it comes to the policy making. So if you are like going and exercising your rights, then it means you are supporting the multi-stakeholder, and you are changing, you are sharing your perspective in order to change the way you do particular thing according to the areas wherein you are like currently working on. Yeah, Elia, you.
Yeah, the thing that I wanted to say is that multi-stakeholderism is just the platform. It's a right. You can speak up. If you don't want to speak up, if you don't have time to be fully informed, then it's your right not to. But the real magic with this part of platform is that you can raise your voice and have a real impact if you want to do that, of course.
And yeah, please.
Just want to add to that. I think those type of criticism, and I saw a couple more in the questions earlier as well. To me, it's really a fake question, because, yeah, of course, making bread or whatever. But the point is that it's open, right? And people can participate if they want to, as Elia said. And I think, to answer this question, really, I actually support universal living wage. Yeah, I think that should be done. But until then, there is always going to be people who are more interested in participating. But as long as the platform is open and you can at any time come in and participate and get yourself informed and make a difference, influence the decision-making process, that's what multi-stakeholder model, that's the promise of the multi-stakeholder model.
Yeah, I mean, multi-stakeholder model and the democracy currently, it's the way in which we live our life, we interact with others. If we don't have that way of thinking, it means we are barricading, or we are creating barriers for the others. And if we follow that model, it means we are in the opinion of giving equitable participation to each and everyone and bringing everyone on the table. Yeah.
Something that I forgot to say, and I think we need to be a little bit humble about it, is that democracy also has its weak points. Because democracy is very expensive, is even worse than Bitcoin in terms of energy intensive. Like, the proof of work for a democracy is so hard. In particular, like the best one in ideal terms, where every point of view is aired in a fair way, and it is aggregated and coordinated, and then sort of things got into a really fair, awesome decision, right? To get to that point, that's not effective. What would be effective is like just ChatGPT tell me what to do, and that's about it, So I still believe, but it's a very hard one, and participate and make our points sort of go through it and be represented in decisions. It's hard. And at the same time, we also need, and this is part of democracy, that the decisions will not be representative of your interests. Decisions will be aggregating all the interests, so you need to sort of give up a lot of things in that fight,
Yeah, and like we have very less time now, and I will conclude the session. So there are certain key elements which were discussed very quite frequently. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Look.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this wonderful panel. I was a little late, so maybe I missed this. There are a lot of criticisms around multi-stakeholderism where they pinpoint to lobbyists who actually duplicate certain voices of the big tech and the government itself. And there's a lot of scholarship pointing in that direction to suggest that you might believe that everyone has an equal voice, but big tech and government organizations have a lot more resources and can further their voices through duplication of private consultancies and other forums. Do you think that is a viable criticism of multi-stakeholderism, and do you think multi-stakeholderism always works?
I think Pablo already mentioned that just like democracy is very expensive, and the same applies to the multi-stakeholder model also. And anyone, if on the panelist, would like to add on that?
Yeah, I'll respond to two things. So the simple answer to your question is yes, of course we always have these challenges, but what are the alternative, right? I mean, you got to think about the alternative. The other thing is, as I earlier mentioned, the processes needs to evolve, right? When you see some of these issues, then maybe the process needs to evolve. But that doesn't mean taking away a stakeholder, you no longer can participate. That's not the right thing. So that leads me to the last point is people need to state their interests, as Pablo said. The effectiveness of multi-stakeholder model is, you need to be transparent about where you come from as well. So if you're a consultancy of a particular big tech or a particular government, you should tell people before you speak. I think that's the spirit of the multi-stakeholder model.
Yeah, and since we have very less time and we have the whole day packed with the schedule, so I would like to share the closing remark on this panel discussion. There are certain key elements which we have identified during the discussion. One is the trust. I think just like in the democracy, the trust is a prerequisite for anything. In these multi-stakeholder model also, trust and the equitable participation of all the stakeholders is quite relevant. And the other one was reforms and the transparent governance. Since in the democracy which we have seen in the 19th century and the democracy which we are currently seeing, there has been certain reforms which there is one phrase which I would like to share. Since change is inevitable, and if someone object to the change, then they might be changed. So these reforms are relevant, and going forward, if we would like to work on these models, then the continuous participation of each and every stakeholder with a focus on giving the space to each and everyone and listening their perspective and forming the policies which can reach to the people who are there in the villages, in the hilly areas, and representing everyone should be the key from this panel discussion. Thank you. And on that, I would like to thank the panelists for sharing their perspective on this insightful panel, and thank you for that. Yeah, we can maybe take one picture with the panelists now. Yeah. We may come.
Again. No problem.
We say,
Can everyone please stand up so for the photo?
Okay, 1, 2. Cheese.
And now we'll make a video of everyone waving and shouting yIGF 2024.
Okay, again, but with more energy this time. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and one more.
Can you share this? Yeah. Thank you for settling down and like making a quick rectangle or a circle. So this is the youth policy statement. Now you must be thinking that we are talking about the policy too much and we are talking about the representation. Are we actually going to give you the chance to represent yourself? Yeah. We will be giving you a chance to represent yourself and sharing your perspective. Like you people are coming from different jurisdiction and you might be facing different challenges which you would like to share. So in this youth policy statement, the objective, it's already written in this sheet that we want to hear from you. What are the challenges which you are facing? What are the things which you would like us to address? What are the things at the APAC level which should get proper attention? So this is the youth policy statement. And I believe you guys are already aware with the overarching theme of the yIGF, but this aligns with the overarching theme of the APR-IGF, which is evolving ecosystem, enduring principles, shaping responsible internet governance. And this theme has certain areas. There are three angles. One is security and trust, the other one is resilience, and the last one is ethical governance of AI. And within these focus areas, we have aligned our theme, the focus areas which we were discussing since morning. And on these focus areas, can we scroll down? Yeah, these are the focus areas, youth rights, the panel discussion, and the last one, meet up with industry experts. Within these segments, we would want you to share your perspective, your issues which you are currently facing in your jurisdiction. And this youth policy statement will be directly merged in the synthesis document of the APR-IGF. I hope each one of you is aware about the synthesis document which Jennifer shared in the morning. Yeah? Yeah, so this will be merged within that document and we will be sharing this doc with you, and there are multiple groups. Groups can be like anything, but they should be equitable, like each one with equal proportion. And since there are people online as well as the local hub, and the local hub people, they would be available with us for day zero only. Not maybe they will be able to participate online, but since they have created a separate structure to be the part of the youth IGF, we will be giving a chance to the local hub people to present their policy statement first, and then if the time permits, we will be giving chance to the people today. But don't worry, we won't be like leaving you, and we want you to present your statement going forward on day 1, day 2, when we have huddles and when we have other exercises planned. Bia, are we fine with that? Naval, the people who are the coordinator for the local hub?
Yes, I think they are aware of this setup.
Cool. Anyone, Ankita, would you like to add anything on that?
No, I think we can just share that we will be creating 3 groups for the on-site participants, and we would request you to not group with your friends, but group with the people who would like you don't know, and that would be a more engaging and insightful activity for all of you.
Yeah, I mean, if you group with your friends, maybe you both have the same perspective, same issues, and you may not get a chance to actually interact with each and every one. So we would suggest that if 2 people are sitting together, then they should not be in the same team.
And we will also have 3 representatives who will report back the youth policy statement that you will be preparing. So if you want, you can create the groups now.
Yeah, we can create the groups. Maybe you guys can, anyone would like to take the lead for group 1?
I guess we can just do it in the afternoon. It seems to show up in this room after lunch.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
all right.
Would you like to add anything, Jenna, on that? No. Cool.
If anyone has any questions.
Yeah, any questions if you guys have, maybe we can take that question. But we won't be taking the question if you say if you would like to group with your friends or maybe with someone you know previously.
What's for lunch?
The policy questions. Yeah, sure. Maybe then we may proceed for the lunch. Maybe we can like discuss the policy questions first, or lunch. Oh, Luke, would you like to add anything? Lunch? Yeah, we are done. Cool. We should be back by 2.
Attendance at 2.
Yeah, and there is this afternoon attendance also, so we would be tracking where you guys are.
No cheating.